Ready? All right, if you would turn to the book of 1 Samuel. I know we just finished a study a few weeks ago on titled Israel Wants a King, talking about King Saul. We're not going to get that far in this study. We're not going to go back and redo all that. We're just going to look at the first. We're going to concentrate on the man Samuel. And from before his birth, we're just basically the first few chapters. It's not going to be a long study, I don't think. Tonight, of course, will just be the introduction. We'll come back and look at some of these things that we talk about tonight. We'll come back and look at them in more detail next time. Basically, the book of 1 Samuel describes the transition of leadership in Israel from judges to kings. Samuel is listed as the last judge in Israel. If you remember, his sons were supposed to be judges, but they turned out to be bad, and the Lord removed them and put the nation, the people of the nation, the citizens there in Israel were being persecuted, basically, by his sons. They weren't doing what was right. And so the people began to gripe and complain to the Lord and demanded a king. And that's when we see King Saul come on the scene. Now, Samuel, I think, again, I mentioned ever so often stories that we remember from Sunday school. Samuel, the birth of Samuel, is certainly another one of those. And we'll go through that as we get time. It's a popular, or at least used to be a popular Sunday school story for children. And it does teach some good lessons for all of us. We'll get to those as we, like I said, as we get to it. Originally, in the original Hebrew books, what they would call their Bible, Samuel, the two books of Samuel were actually one book. It was later that it was separated. If you, like we did before, if you read through the end of the book of 1 Samuel, you see that 2 Samuel picks right up, and it's just a continuation. And then also, remember, Samuel dies in, I believe it's chapter 25, if I remember right. Anyway, Samuel dies. So Samuel did not write. He may have written part of this book, of the first book, but he didn't write the rest of the first book or the second book. It would have been impossible. There's all kinds of notions on who wrote the rest of that, or who wrote all of it, actually. Some say that Samuel didn't write any of it at all. It was written by somebody else, and there's multiple different names out there mentioned. We won't go into all that. That's deeper than we want to go. Samuel is pictured as a type of Christ. He was a prophet, priest, not king, but a judge. Three things that Christ is. He's a prophet, priest, and also a judge, if you want to get down to it. He's also our king, but in that day and time, Israel didn't have a king. He was highly respected by the people. The people in Israel loved him. They come to love him. And even in his old age, you see even what we read when Saul came along, the people in Israel revered Samuel more than they did Saul, their king. Now, in the book of Acts, let me make sure I'm getting the right scripture here. Book of Acts, chapter 3. You turn there real quick. We see Samuel mentioned. And this is right after the day of Pentecost when the church was added to. And this is in Peter's second sermon that he preached. In Acts chapter 3, let's start with verse 22. For Moses truly said unto the fathers, a prophet shall the Lord your God raise up unto you, of your brethren like unto me. Him shall ye hear in all things whatsoever he shall say unto you, and it shall come to pass that every soul which shall not hear that prophet shall be destroyed from among the people. So that's from Deuteronomy chapter 18. That's a quote from Moses. And it's prophesying of the coming of Christ. Now, the very next verse 24 says, Yea, and all the prophets from Samuel and those that follow after, as many as have spoken, have likewise foretold of these days. So that's where we get the thought that Samuel was the first prophet. Some say Moses was a prophet. Some will say Joshua was a prophet. Some say there were others. They'll list others that they say were prophets. And certainly Moses wrote prophecy. The prophecy he wrote was directly from God, no different than what Samuel wrote and said. But as far as after Israel officially took the land and was officially a nation with land, Samuel was the first prophet after the judges. Now, if you turn back to 1 Samuel chapter 1, and we'll start reading in chapter 1. We're not going to get very far tonight. I don't want to get too far ahead because I want to come back and look at some of these in detail next time. But in chapter 1, verse 1, now there was a certain man of, and I'm not going to pronounce a lot of these names because I can't. I'll just be honest. If one of you other guys want to do it, that's up to you. But now there was a certain man of this place of Mount Ephraim, and his name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroham, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuaph, and Ephrathite. And he had 2 wives. The name of the one was Hannah, and the name of the other Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. So we see a similar situation with this man here and his 2 wives, and with Jacob, right? Jacob had 2 wives, and one of his wives, his favorite wife, one who was his favorite, she was not able to have children at first. Very similar to Abraham. You know, Abraham, Sarah could not have any children at first, and of course, Sarah kind of forced him to marry her handmaiden, and he had a child with her. That was not the Lord's, without the Lord's approval at the time. Now here we don't know anything about that part of their background. Nothing said there about that, but it appears as though if you read on in the next few chapters, Hannah is obviously favored by the Lord. And this man went up out of his city yearly to worship and to practice unto the Lord of hosts in Shiloh. And the 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, the priest of the Lord, were there. Now, these in Shiloh at this time, it's my understanding that the tabernacle was there, along with the Ark of the Covenant, all those things that were with the tabernacle that would later be moved to Jerusalem, to the temple. And of course, it's also my understanding on this too that once David set up his kingdom in Jerusalem, it was some point during that time that the tabernacle was moved to Jerusalem with everything. But during this time period, it was still at Shiloh, and that's where the Lord had commanded it. I was going to bring the map up here and show some of these places, but they're so small on the map you couldn't see it anyway, so there's really no point. Just know that all these places that we're talking about are north of Jerusalem. They're not very far from Jerusalem, but they're north of Jerusalem. And when the time was that Elkanah offered, he gave to Peninnah his wife and to all her sons and her daughters portions. But unto Hannah he gave a worthy portion, for he loved Hannah, but the Lord had shut up her womb. So again, we see here's a man. Hannah is his favorite wife. It appears this other woman has given him several sons and daughters. It doesn't give us an exact number, but he has several sons and daughters with her, and we know what the scriptures tells us that a man, that's his pride and joy is his children, especially the more that you have. That's the way the scripture reads. But Hannah is barren. The Lord has shut up her womb. Notice that the Lord did. It wasn't from any kind of disease or any kind of defect from her birth or from anything like that, any wound of any kind. The Lord shut it up. And he does that. Remember, he did it to Sarah. He did it to Rachel. So we see here the Lord is in command of all things. And it appears as though there's nothing wrong with this woman, other than as far as her being able to have children. She's not she's not a handicap in any way. There's nothing healthy. She seems to be a healthy woman, but for whatever reason, and we'll find out that reason later, but for whatever reason, the Lord has closed up her womb so that she can't have children. And you notice her husband, he is given a portion of his inheritance to his other wife and her children. Now to Hannah it says he gave a worthy portion. In other words, a double portion, or a much larger portion than he gave the others. And her adversary also provoked her sore, for to make her fret, because the Lord had shut up her womb. And as he did so year by year, when she went up to the house of the Lord, so she provoked her. Therefore she wept and did not eat. Now, it doesn't tell us who her adversary is, does it? Who do you think it was? I would think it was the other wife, because she got a double portion and the other wife didn't. She's jealous of her, and so she's provoking her. Remember, Leah did the same thing to Rachel, didn't she? So every year, when they went up to the house of the Lord, to the tabernacle, to worship, that's when things would start. She'd provoke her, and normally, and it's not how it is. The enemy, our adversaries, will oftentimes, when they know we're trying to worship the Lord, or when we're trying to concentrate on things of the Lord, isn't that when it seems like the adversary comes the most? It becomes the most aggravating anyway. They try to distract us from things of the Lord, and that's what was going on here. She was trying to distract her. Then said Elkanah, her husband, to her, Hannah, why weepest thou, and why eatest thou not? And why is thy heart grieved? Am not I better to thee than 10 sons? So Hannah rose up after they had eaten in Shiloh, and after they had drunk. Now Eli the priest sat upon a seat by a post of the temple of the Lord, And she was in bitterness of soul, and prayed unto the Lord, and wept sore. And she vowed a vow, and said, O Lord of hosts, if thou wilt indeed look on the affliction of thine handmaid, and remember me, and not forget thine handmaid, but wilt give unto thine handmaid a man child, then I will give him unto the Lord all the days of his life, and there shall no razor come upon his head. Now, who were the men in the Old Testament that were to never cut their hair? Nazarite. They were, remember, I'm drawing a blank. What was his name? The judge. Not Samuel. Samson. Yeah, Samson. Samson was a Nazarite. There's confusion there. A lot of people try to say that Jesus was a Nazarite, and that's where they get his long hair from in the pictures. Jesus was not a Nazarite. He was a Nazarene, which meant he was from the city of Nazareth. That has nothing to do with being a Nazarite. Anyway, so she makes a vow, Hannah makes a vow that if the Lord will give her a man-child, that she will dedicate him to the Lord for all his life. And some say that this is where, some churches have baby dedications, and some say that that's where this comes from. Well, if it is, it's wrong, because that's not what this was about. And people today that do baby dedications, you have no control over that child, especially after they reach a certain age. You can dedicate them all you want, but if the Lord's not in it, it ain't gonna work. Verse 12, and it came to pass as she continued praying before the Lord, that Eli marked her mouth. In other words, Eli basically told her to hush, stop. Now Hannah, she spake in her heart. Only her lips moved, but her voice was not heard. Therefore Eli thought she had been drunken. So he thought she was drunk. Well, they eat and drank while they were there, right? Well, she had been fasting. Eli said unto her, How long wilt thou be drunken? Put away thy wine from thee. And Hannah answered and said, No, my Lord, I am a woman of a sorrowful spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but have poured out my soul before the Lord. Count not thine handmaid for a daughter of Belial, for out of the abundance of my complaint and grief have I spoken hitherto. Then Eli answered and said, Go in peace, and the God of Israel grant thee thy petition that thou hast asked of him. Now Eli, it appears as though, at least as of right now, hasn't heard what she said. He may have heard part of it, but he doesn't know what the vow was that she made. And he says he marked her mouth. In other words, he put his hand on her mouth to stop her from speaking out loud. And she continued on in her heart, but her lips still moved, it says. So he just assumed she was drunk. He had no idea. And she said, Let thine handmaid find grace in thy sight. So the woman went her way and did eat, and her countenance was no more sad. So her fast is over with. And that's how a fast works, is it not? She had a problem or an issue that she wanted to be close to the Lord with, and to talk things over with the Lord. And so she fasted from food and drink during that time. And once she had her peace, once she had her talk with the Lord, once that was done, her fast was over with. She was ready to eat and drink again. And they rose up in the morning early and worshipped before the Lord, and returned and came home to their house in Ramah. Now, remember Ramah? Remember where we studied about Saul? Ramah was always where Samuel went back to. That was his hometown, and that's where he lived. They came to their house in Ramah, and Elkanah knew Hannah his wife, and the Lord remembered her. Wherefore it came to pass, when the time was come about after Hannah had conceived, that she bare a son, and called his name Samuel, saying, Because I have asked him of the Lord. So Samuel means asked of the Lord, or asked of God. So Samuel, she has her son. Now, does she keep her vow? What do we do if we make a vow? Now, the New Testament tells us we shouldn't be making vows because we can't keep them. And most of the time that's true. We're human, even God's people. That's another thing about, like baby or child dedications. People make a vow to dedicate that child to the Lord, but we have no control over that. And it's an empty vow, basically. It's in vain. This, however, is a different situation. She sticks to her vow. Wherefore it came to pass when the time was, verse 21, and the man Elkanah and all his house went up to offer unto the Lord the yearly sacrifice and his vow. But Hannah went not up, for she said unto her husband, I will not go up until the child be weaned, and then I will bring him, that ye may appear before the Lord, and there abide forever. Now, two things here. We know from the law that after a woman had a child, she couldn't go to the temple or the tabernacle for a certain period of time. Here, she says, until the child be weaned. So, in the law, it says as long as she had an issue of blood. Now, what's the difference? Well, here she has made a vow. She can't leave her son with Eli the priest until the baby is weaned, until he's ready to eat on his own. And Elkanah, her husband, said unto her, Do what seemeth thee good, tarry until thou have weaned him. Only the Lord establish his word. So the woman abound and gave her no suck until she weaned him. And when she had weaned him, she took him up with her with 3 bullocks and 1 ephah of flour and a bottle of wine, and brought him unto the house of the Lord in Shiloh, and the child was young. And they slew a bullock and brought the child to Eli. And she said, O my Lord, as thy soul liveth, my Lord, I am the woman that stood by thee here praying unto the Lord. For this child I prayed, and the Lord hath given me my petition, which I asked of him. Therefore also have I lent him to the Lord. As long as he liveth, he shall be lent to the Lord, and he worshipped the Lord there. So, notice she went back to worship by herself. Well, she had a child with her, of course, but there was no other adults with her. Her husband didn't go with her. It was just her. This was her vow to the Lord. This was not anything that was going to break any vows that she'd made to her husband in marriage, but this was her doing. This was her vow. This is her responsibility to go back to Eli, to the priest. Now, in the next chapter, we'll see where Hannah prays again. Eli is a little confused at what she's done, but he does understand that this is a serious matter. She has promised her son to the Lord, and so she is going to. There'll come a day where she is going to leave him with Eli at the tabernacle, and so we'll get to that later. We're going to stop there for tonight. If you want to read ahead, you can. Again, as we go through this, we'll be coming back and forth from back to chapter 1 some. and see what, comparing some things. Samuel, as you remember, at least in his later, towards the end of his life, that we've already talked about a few weeks ago, was a very interesting man, very interesting. He was, again, the last judge, the first prophet, and was also the priest in Israel in that day. Now, he was not the only priest. Remember, there was remember the priest, I forget his name, but Saul had a priest and all his family killed, all except for one son that escaped. And that son became the priest after that, the high priest, and he was followed David around. But Saul had the whole priest family killed at one point because they had sided with, or he thought they had sided with David. They really hadn't. They just had taken David in for a short time. But you'll start seeing how all those things played in, and all this comes together when we get done with the book.